allow the recurring feelings, the depth of the feelings, to get really curious about them. Allow them to show you even more. Ask them questions. There might be belief systems underneath there that really need to be seen and possibly released. There might be programs, there might be subconscious ways of being that are rooted in an old experience or trauma that are not actually your soul's truth. And the reason it's coming up is because your soul wants you to see that you've been operating according to this old limited belief system or way of being that's not really your truth. And in order to get you to see that it's not your truth, it's going to keep showing you what you need to see to start going, okay, wait a minute, this isn't who I am, this isn't me, this isn't my truth. Show me what I need to see to come back into what is my soul's truth, to come back into the true essence of who I am, to come back into my core, my center. So for example, let's make this a little tangible. You have a repetitive fear, because fear is also an emotion. It's an energy, it's an experience. So let's say you have a repetitive fear, and that repetitive fear, if you are just with it and witness it, that's beautiful. And the energy is moving. But if it's repetitive, the soul would also ideally want you to sit with it and go, okay, so I have this repetitive fear, and fear is, of course, the opposite of love. And the soul resonates at the frequency of love. So the true soul frequency is love, because the soul is one with the divine, one with the creator, one with all that is. Well, that's love. That's light. That's abundance. That is the quintessence of the divine. Love, light, abundance. Okay? Like a trinity. And so when the soul is in that love state, it's vibrating at the consciousness of the divine. It's truth. The fear is, let's say, around money, lack, limitation, scarcity. So, and that's a really big one. I have a whole program on that. That's a really big one. So this is just a very brief overview. Well, the soul is wanting the fear to arise so that the soul can look at that fear, which is ego, because the ego is rooted in separation. The ego exists because it believes it is separate. Now, we have identified as the ego, as the limited, separate, purely physical self. We have been conditioned to identify as that. And the journey of ascension, the journey of returning to soul, of returning to self, of returning to truth, of returning to love, is to no longer identify with that limited, human, egoic self, and to begin identifying with the eternal, divine, soul, multidimensional self, which is love, which is light, which is abundance. And so if this recurring fear is coming up, the soul is saying, this is such a beautiful opportunity for you to see this egoic attachment to lack, for example, okay? So that you can see what you've been holding on to and what's been directing your life and your subconscious and your conscious choices, so that you can become curious about it, so that you can look at what is the belief underneath that, or what is the traumatic experience underneath that, what is the soul trauma underneath that. Getting curious so that you create consciousness, so that you create choice. Because when you create choice, That's when you can choose to no longer identify with the egoic, I'm separate from the abundance of my own divine nature. I'm separate from the love that I am. I'm separate from the light that I am. 2, I choose to align to the abundance I am, the love I am, the light I am. Soul, not ego. Okay? So that's very simple, but very broad overview to highlight what's the mechanism of what is actually occurring and why emotions come up. Because they bring us consciousness as we become curious, we see, we receive the wisdom, and then we can make a choice of who and how to identify with the ego, with the old experience, or with the soul, the true self. Every experience we have in life, we choose to identify with ego or soul. Again, there's no right or wrong. There's no blame. There's no judgment. It's a journey. We are here as souls, infinite souls, in physicality, in the density of the Earth 3D plane, so that we can have experience. We're not here for any other reason other than to have the experience of separation to come back in a union. In a nutshell, we're here to experience it. We're here because the soul learns so much about itself from that separation, from duality. The soul has learned so much through duality. The soul has learned so much by seeing itself in these different realms. And as we choose to come back to soul, as we choose to come into more of our true self and no longer be lost in the density, then what we're really choosing is to come back in the union. So we're going from separation, ego, limited self, into union, soul self, divine self. And this is a journey, a very deep journey. I mean, it is the journey at the heart of everything I offer, has been the heart of everything I've personally been working on for well over 10 years, consciously, because that journey from separation to union, from fear to love, from ego to soul, personally, I see no other reason for being here if we're not going through that journey. Otherwise, we just get lost in the illusions of everything. And we're certainly not in our power and in our sovereignty when we're not doing the work to re-identify with soul. And this is where we are collectively, right? This is an individual journey. Each individual soul has to take this journey at some point. But it's also a collective journey that we are on this planet to come back into union, because we've been letting separation rule us for so long. And that separation is what creates the wars. It's what creates the violence. It's what creates the rape. It's what creates the poverty, the lack, the scarcity, the limitation. That's all ego. That is all separation. And I'm not saying it's easy, this journey, but the freedom is well worth it. The level of internal power and consciousness, it's well worth it. Believe me. I've experienced things that I didn't even think were possible 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And it's a internal sense of freedom as you withdraw more and more of your energy from the illusion and separation into union. But that union happens inside first. You can't be in union with anything out here. You're not first in union with yourself. Because if you're excluding yourself from divine union, that's not union. That's why it always is internal work, because it is your consciousness that creates union. And it is not the consciousness of your ego mind. It is the consciousness of your heart that creates union. The heart is the focal point. The heart is the point of union. It is the heart that brings everything back into union. Why? Because the heart is love. What unifies? Love. Love unifies. It unifies all parts of you back in wholeness. That's why my one-on-one, radically reclaim yourself in love. How? Through your heart, through love. You bring all of you into wholeness, into oneness, into union with your true self. And you lovingly dissolve what is not that. Now, it sounds way more simple than it is. Those of you who have done this work know it is not simple. And yet it is. Right? It's a devotion to your soul. It's a devotion to love. It's a devotion to freedom. And it is continuously coming back to love, back to this truth of union. And we do that through our emotions as much as we do that through parts and pieces of ourselves. Because it's the ego that would have us fear the emotion as being more powerful than us. For example, we're going to lose ourselves in this if we go into this emotion. It's the soul that says, this is a beautiful part of my experience. I'm going to witness and receive its wisdom. And then I'm going to be more in my truth and power as a result of that, more in my wholeness, because I need not fear anything. And it's that journey, lovingly facing the fears, lovingly dissolving the fears through consciousness, through awareness, through choice, through love, through that pulling back of your power.